Hello and welcome back to the From the Terrace podcast and to another edition of Champ Talk, where your two favourite FTT hosts discuss the best league in the world. Before I mention anything, before any championship talk, actually, Regan, we'll save it for the podcast. Don't worry, we'll save it for the podcast, which you're going to record next.
Oh, suspense! If you're watching the Champ Talk, but not the main one, click over it now. You'll miss something exciting. Even I don't know what it is.
Anyway, right. I mean, we seem to mention them every week, but Nottingham Forest lost 2-1 to Bristol City on the weekend, and turns out we're geniuses because Sabri Lambucci has been sacked by Nottingham Forest as of tonight. Before we get on to who he has been replaced by, initial thoughts on Lambucci being sacked and maybe their performance at the weekend and everything?
Well, we both said it. It was coming, basically. What was it? Their worst start in how many years? Like 65?
One of those embarrassing records, yeah.
Something like that. So if you're starting like that, and then you lose your next game or maybe even the game after, you're in trouble. And if there's people around that are after the job, like the person who got the job, who we know from experience is who's a very good manager, then I'm not surprised he lost his job. And especially after the game at the weekend against once again, an impressive Bristol City side, I'm not surprised because the way they performed last season at this stage compared to where they are this season is almost uncomparable. So I'm not surprised.
Well, I think the worry, if we get on to the Forest Bristol City game before we mention obviously who was appointed, although everyone will know, it was actually a different performance from Forest and Bristol City. Really, it was a game that, to be honest, Nottingham Forest dominated, but they gave himself obviously too much to do by going 2 goals down. But Dan Bentley was man of the match in the game. He saved. I saw the highlights. He saved so many chances. It was ridiculous. And Forest actually, for once, created a lot of chances and should have done better. So it's quite weird that this is the game finally sort of ended it for Lambucci. But obviously, like you've said, if they had someone lined up, that's what they've done it. And you can't, if you've got someone like that lined up, you can't sort of wait and hesitate on it, can you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I obviously put out on Twitter saying, obviously mentioning how I predicted it before the season even started that he'd be the first to be sacked. And I got a Forest fan replying sort of saying, "Oh, can I have the lottery numbers, please?" Sort of joking. And it seems like even though from the outside, I don't think many people called Lambucci to be sacked, really. Maybe the Forest fans didn't see it as too far away anyway, because during lockdown, they've been absolutely terrible end of last season, beginning of this season. And I think the Forest owners are very much ones where you can't get on the wrong side of them. They invest quite a bit of money into that club. Although maybe not in the right way, they do invest money, and they go through quite a lot of managers. So I'm not surprised to see Lambucci sacked. And at the end of the day, I mean, before we get on to Chris Hughton, who obviously has replaced him, how do you sum up his actual time, like the whole tenure of his job then? Like, because do you think he did a good job coming 7th last season, or do you think that wasn't good enough?
I think with the squad he had at the beginning of the season, I think he did a good job in that respect, but I lost a lot of respect for him in the position he was when coming out of lockdown to finish where he did at the beginning of the end of the season. I think is possibly one of the worst performances I've seen from a manager. They were challenging. There were people saying I think they were more favourites than Fulham to get into the top 2 automatics, and then bottling on the last day. So it's kind of, that last season was a bit ups and downs that I didn't expect them to do as well as they did, and full credit to the manager for that. But considering where they were and where they ended up and where they are now, it kind of overshadows it, because I think that moment last season will overshadow the club for a long time, and I think it's Lambucci's fault for that.
Yeah, I think you're right. As in the sort of squad they had by the end of the season, the way it was their chance, wasn't it? Because Forest I know Forest sort of to go through phases of maybe getting the playoffs once every few years. But they're not a club that, like, although they're a massive club, there's some clubs in the Championship you guarantee top 6 a lot of seasons, don't you? And they'll definitely be there and thereabouts. But Forest aren't one of them, and they really let that opportunity go. And the way and in the fashion they did it, like you said, it was just a joke. They shouldn't have been anywhere near outside that top 6. But in more positive news, I guess, for Forest fans, I mean, I'm assuming they see it as positive. I haven't been able to read through the replies to the appointment yet. How do you think Chris Hughton's going to do? And do you think it's an appointment that could see him get promotion, see him get top six? How do you think he'll set the team up?
I think it's a very good appointment because we've seen what he's done in the Championship countless times, and I haven't seen the details of it, but I'd imagine his success rate in managing Championship teams is probably up there as one of the best in the Championship. And we've seen what the Forest team can do, like we saw it last season, and it's basically the same. It's basically the same players. I think with Hughton's experience in that league, I mean, I predict him to come fourth with the team they've got and Lambushi. So I think with Hughton, if he gets them going quickly, because I feel a slower integration won't suit them at all. I think if they get him going quickly and they get the results, I could say top two because we'll probably get onto it that none of the teams around there are really looking like top two material, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So I think he could make a charge for it, but it needs to happen quickly. But it remains to be said if that happens or not.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hughton is the perfect man for that job. And like we said, a lot of people said before, although Dean Holden with Bristol's 100% record is smashing it in the moment, Bristol City fans were outraged that they didn't appoint Hughton. Watford fans, it looked like they were going to appoint Hughton. They were a bit annoyed, I think, that they didn't get him. But they've got someone else in, obviously. So he was a man in demand. And I was surprised no one else took him up earlier. But I think what Forest were good at last season, we know they've got the potential to be this side, was they were good at winning games 1-0. And I feel Chris Hughton is the master at that. He's the master at building solid teams. And he does like two up front, as we know. And they've got Lyle Taylor and Lewis Grabban. That could be a great partnership. I'm sure he'll obviously want to do some of his own business in January. And I was joking with Barnes when it was linked with Bristol City to appoint him. But if he hadn't gone to Burnley, Dale Stephens would have been signed by Nottingham Forest. I think we could agree on that. Yeah. But he knows who he wants, and I'm sure he'll bring in a few players who know how to get promotion out of the Championship. Wouldn't be surprised if Anthony Knockout's on the cards for Nottingham Forest, although you've already spent 10 million on him. We know what Fulham are like. They'll happily loan him out, probably. But I think Hughton's a great appointment for Forest. He's going to have to rebuild that team a bit, but they have got the foundations to certainly make another top six push already. It's not one that's going to take too long to get it up and running. Going on to another game then, sort of speaking of promotion contenders, Derby had a slow start to the season, but they've gone on 1-0 at Norwich thanks to a Wayne Rooney 90th minute free kick. I don't think the talking point really is Derby. It may seem harsh after they won the game, but we know they've had a poor start and we've discussed that. We're going to talk about Norwich's start to the season because we haven't really touched on it. It's been really indifferent, hasn't it? It's been poor.
Yeah, going into the season, I thought that, they've kept the exact same players that won the league 2 seasons ago. And I was fooled, and I imagine quite a lot of people were saying that, it's the exact same team, and it's a weaker league than what it was when they did actually go up. So I thought they'd walk it, but it's just they're so inconsistent. I've never seen a team so inconsistent. I saw that even in signs when they were in the Premier League, they would either try really hard and then lose still, or they go out and smack. They go out and just roll over to oppositions, and then they put in a great performance like they did against Leicester when they won 1-0. But the game against Bournemouth, they were all right. They drew against an underwhelming Preston team, and then they beat Huddersfield 1-0. And then they've lost this game. I can't see any consistency. And in a league like this, I think that's what you need is a string of consistency. And unless they fix up and actually score goals, because they've barely scored any this season, then I think they might be in a bit of trouble. And I think they'll finish a lot lower than what people expected them to.
Yeah, speaking of consistency, we mentioned last week that Dean Holden's team selection being consistent is what's boding Bristol City season so well so far. With Norwich, I'd like to know what their fans think. It feels like I've seen a lot of their fans say on Twitter that the football's a bit slower this year, and you with Norwich you think about high high intensity football going forward in that Premier League season and in the season they won the league. But before that, when Farke first took charge, they did have a season sort of building, and a lot of the complaints were about the football being too slow, passing but with no intent. And it seems like those sort of moans are coming back again. And also the team selection, the lack of consistency comes in his team selection too. I saw the lineup on the weekend, and Lucas Roop, who's a player who Norwich fans really don't like anyway, was playing in holding midfield when he's meant to be a more, I believe, further forward player. You had Emi Buendia out on the right wing. You had Marcus Stiepermann, a player that Daniel Farke didn't want to touch in the Premier League, playing games again. Although he did really well in the Championship, that I can't see a player being motivated to play for his manager when he didn't feel like he gave sort of any sort of trust in him in the Premier League. Now Ben Godfrey's gone, Ben Gibson's come into defence, but it feels, I think the problem with Norwich at the moment is their midfield and going forward is just, although it has always been their defence, it just like seems like there's no intensity. You're not going to get these passages of play if you're constantly changing your team. Players can't learn of each other, and all of the thing around Todd Cantwell as well. He could still go, obviously, because the transfer window for domestic transfers is for another week long. I don't know, maybe Norwich just need the transfer window to end, but it seems really weird that 1 week Buendia is not even in the squad, and then next minute he's starting right wing, which is not even his position. Just seems odd to me, and I think Daniel Farke is starting to be found out a bit, and I wonder how long they give him. I know there are clubs that are patient, but I don't think Daniel Farke is the right man for the job, personally. I think they've got a really good team that should be getting at least top 6. Yeah. But the way they're going at the moment, it seems like maybe Farke's been found out, and maybe that year they went up was a fluke season, because a lot of people seem to think it was, with the amount of goals they conceded as well. Anyway, we'll move on to it was at Coventry Bournemouth, and the Bournemouth, another one of the relegated sides. They won, was it 3-1? Sorry,
3-1. Yeah,
3-1 against Coventry. It looked a pretty convincing performance. We haven't mentioned Bournemouth too much. They actually look the best out of the relegated sides, don't they?
They do, yeah. I did fear for them, especially because they lost Eddie Howe, and they've lost Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser and Nathan Ake and Aaron Ramsdale. They're how many are listed, I don't know, of their best players from the season they went down and for last season. So I did fear for them, but they do look really strong, and they're putting these results in, and they're getting these results out of games that makes you question, could they challenge, go straight back up again? I mean, Dan Gosling, we've seen sometimes in the Prem just how good he can be against top sides. He seems to show up against, and he scored a brace, as well as Jefferson Lerma, who I think is a quality player, and he's probably one of the best midfielders in the Championship. Mm-hmm. I think he's proved it again, time and time again, especially the last 2-3 weeks for Bournemouth, and that's a solid core that I think could take them back up.
Yeah, I agree. It's the point that I think the reason Bournemouth are doing so well is the core of the side. But we did mention that was their strong point in the predictions video, but we thought maybe, I don't know, there wasn't enough quality elsewhere on the pitch, but maybe we've been found that wrong. Yeah, obviously it's still a really early start, and it's not like they've lit the league up, but they've been good starters. The players like Lewis Cook, Chris Metham in the team, Lloyd Kelly, Dan Gosling, like you mentioned, is a good core. And I think the reason we maybe had them a little bit lower was just because the Eddie Howe effect, and that guy has basically ran that club for years, and he has been what everything revolves around. And maybe we thought that him moving on would have a bigger effect, but maybe we were naive to the fact that Tyndall was his right-hand man as well, and he did everything with Howe. So if he's been learning from Howe all these years, maybe things haven't changed so much, and he's made his little tweaks that he wants to see, but the culture on the club is still the same without Eddie Howe, and it might be like that. That might be why they're still doing so well, because I think a lot of people expected bigger changes at Bournemouth, but it's not really gone that way. Anyway, the last game we are going to mention from the weekend's results is Brentford Preston. Brentford 2, Preston 4. We went 2-0 up, 2 Ivan Toney goals, and I was buzzing with that, and I still am buzzing with that. The guy who scored a penalty last week, 2 this week. He's off the mark, and there was a lot of calls for Marcus Forss to start just because he'd been playing so well. But now Tony's got the goals. It eases us, and it's like, thank God we have got a striker who can score the goals in this team, and he's only going to get better, obviously. But the two goals completely papered over the cracks. It was a terrible performance from start to finish, in all honesty, for Brentford. Maybe not from start to finish, maybe that's harsh. As soon as Christian Norgard left the pitch in the 20th minute, it was awful from there on in. Luckily, we have signed Vitaly Janelt, who's going to be a Norgard sort of like for like. So Norgard looks like he should be fine after the international break to return, thank God. But Janelt wasn't ready to play in that game. When Norgard went off and we had Matthias Jensen playing home, it's just not the same. Norgard doesn't just dictate play. He is the strongest tackler in the Championship. He is the best player in that position in the league, no doubt in my mind, that holding midfield role. And the whole midfield was the problem there. Think about this. Preston out possessioned Brentford. When does that ever happen? It doesn't happen. Brentford are possession-based side. They pretty much have the ball against every team in the league more than they do. Maybe last season, the only team who had the ball more than us was probably, like in a game with us, was Leeds United. And that's because Leeds is so good. The midfield was all over the place. Marcondes and Jensen couldn't play together. I felt sorry for Josh Da Silva because he looked like the best player on the pitch. He was trying his hardest. And there's been... The reaction from Brent fans on Twitter is ridiculous. Like it is really disappointing. And 4 points from 4 games for a team who should be getting top 2, that squad should be getting top 2 or at least top 6, isn't good enough. And another slow start's frustrating. And I think Thomas Frank is completely to blame for that loss. He made his changes too late. He wasn't proactive. He was reactive as always. I'm not going to say Thomas Frank out yet because I think with what he did last season, he deserves a chance to turn things around. A lot of fans calling for his head and making some ridiculous calls is just stupid. But what I think the most worrying thing from that game for Brentford was 2 things. The reactiveness of Thomas Frank. He feels like he hasn't learned from last season because that cost Brentford a lot of games last season. In those 1-0 games where they lost 1-0 a lot, he wasn't proactive enough to change things early on. And the second thing is that the Brentford conceded 4 goals. Now, that won't become a theme, I'm hoping, because Brentford last season based everything off of having such a solid defence. And I can't remember I don't think Brentford conceded for all of last season. Definitely didn't concede more than 3 goals and only lost by more than 1 goal once. And it was actually to Preston. Conceding 4 goals in 12 minutes, no matter what football club you are, isn't good enough, is it?
No.
It's just it's not good enough to concede 4 goals in 12 minutes. And that's all I'm going to take from the game. It's a slow start to the season for Brentford. Slow start to the season for Brentford. I think we're another club who's going to benefit from the window closing. I think Ben Rama is going to stay now, but obviously he didn't play again because I think there's still this worry that there might be that slight little chance that he left. So he played in the cup where he tore you lot a new one, but didn't play in the league. And there's players who Brent fans are questioning Thomas Frank's team selection who are not playing, and they're our best players. Sai Benrahma not playing, Godos not playing, David Herrera on the bench again. And I'm sorry, I like Luke Daniels, but he looked really slow on some of the goals against Preston. And if you've made a point out of Herrera now. I know he had the thing about going to Arsenal, but now he's signed a new contract. You made him captain for the Fulham game. If you're going to put that trust in him, I think after international break, David Herrera definitely comes back into goal, and I'll be surprised if he doesn't because he makes a big difference to how Brentford play. Anyway, I just think the worrying thing is just the reactiveness of Thomas Frank, and you worry that slow start, reactiveness in games, is it going to be the same things that cost Brentford promotion and a team that should be getting promoted a Premier League place again? Anyway, it is really early in the season, like I said, and I'm sure Brentford will definitely get better, and I guarantee you we're in the top 6. Although that seems risky to say. Lastly, before we get on to the next game week, Barnsley, Regan, Gerhard Struber has left the club to join New York Red Bulls. Thoughts?
We talked about this last week that we feel Barnsley would be in, and since it's now happened, will be in quite a bit of trouble because you look at that Barnsley team and you don't see immense loads of quality. You see one or two players that can put in a good performance and can win your games. But to me, I think that team was, as it is, and won those games because of Struber. I think that the mentality he put into those players, and just you saw it even on the last day of the season. Not to bring it up again, but you saw the mentality they had on the last day of the season when they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. I don't. I mean, I don't know who they're going to bring in, but with the group of players, I can't see that happen too much often. And if the results start slipping and they don't find a replacement, or the replacement means the results start slipping, I would generally fear for them a lot more than what I did, and I'm pretty sure a lot more than what you, me, and Barnes, and a lot of other Championship fans predicted come the end of the season. Because if they can't get results together and they don't have that influence in the dressing room and someone who obviously all the players admired and looked up to and followed, if they can't get that again, then it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, I think Struber grew frustrated at the lack of business at Barnsley. He did come out and make comments saying there's things that he wants to achieve, and it looked like the club didn't want to achieve them with him, and they were just happy staying in the league. And to be honest, I think Gerhard Struber, let's be honest, last season we were praising Struber, and we thought he would be the reason Barnsley stayed up and had a better season this season. But those players aren't good enough. They really aren't. Struber just had them playing brilliant football. Those players aren't good enough. Last season, if it wasn't for Wigan's point deduction, Barnsley would be a League One club right now. They were the third worst team in the league, and that usually gets you relegated. It was just different circumstances, but they got lucky. And I agree with you now. I if I knew Struber would be going so early, I would completely change my Barnes predictions. They've started badly under him. I'd be surprised if they get a good manager in. I mean, we can't say that. They might get someone who turns them around, but I'm really worried for Barnsley right now because I think Struber was such a good manager. But a lot of clubs wanted, and I'm quite surprised he went to New York Red Bulls. I reckon the reason he's gone there is a big wage packet, to be honest. But yeah, I think we Barnsley fans will feel exactly the same as us about their season. Be very worried because I think relegation is just over the horizon already, to be honest. With Struber was the only reason I think anyone had Barnsley outside the relegation zone, and now he's gone. I think you're dead, to be honest, Barnsley. I can't say I'm that concerned. I think Championship's a better place for that Barnsley Football Club. But anyway, Regan, there's predictions. You counted them up this week. How are we doing?
I mean, all we can do is literally, look down there or look up there, see where it is. Because last week you made me look like a tit because I said look down there, and then the results were above me.
Yeah, so I think they're gonna be up there for now.
Now I'm gonna look like it. There's one of these places. It's one of them there. I had a stellar week, I've got to say. I got 6 right, and you only got 3. And the only reason I got as many right as I did is because just sheer logic, that the fact that Sheffield Wednesday and QPR are too crap to beat each other.
Yeah.
And that Stoke and Birmingham are just so boring that they were both going to end in a draw.
I mean,
so that was basically it.
I was naive to think there was hope in those football matches, wasn't I? It's my own fault. It's my own fault to think Sheffield Wednesday and QPR and Stoke and Birmingham can muster up a good game of football. Oh, God. I was getting a bit adventurous, wasn't I? Maybe I thought the Championship was better than it is. Anyway, yeah, I am losing. But do I not get plus 5 points for predicting Lambucci to be sacked?
But you get -5 for saying that Bale doesn't,
Yeah, well, that's a completely different series, don't we? Top punditry here at FTC as always. Anyway, Regan, there is an international break that separates us from the next game week, but we're still going to do our predictions anyway. And then next weekend, I'm going to be on with Barnsley, sort of discussing the beginning of every club season. Anyway, we'll get on to those predictions. The first one is the Friday night football, the 16th of October. Derby County are playing Watford.
There was news yesterday on deadline day that Feu had left, and Danny Welbeck's gone. And like we said in the Championship, there's still quite a way to go for a lot of these players to leave, especially the Premier League, where there's still interest in Ismaila Sarr from Man United, etc. That can still happen. Obviously, by the time that the next game week comes around, the window would have closed. So I don't know what Watford's team will look like come that game week, but I'm still going to back them just because I don't know why. I think it's like I've said every week on the back Watford. I think they just have that little bit of quality. I know Derby has Rooney, but I think Watford have a little bit more quality that can just spur them over the line.
Yeah, I think I'm going to join you on Watford. I'm not entirely convinced by them yet, in all honesty. They lost to Reading on the weekend. But I'm still not convinced by Derby. And I know that seems a bit of a cop-out. I'm not convinced by either side. But Derby did beat Norwich, but Norwich looked poor. And it's not like Derby were exactly showed much creativity. It was down to Wayne Rooney. If you're, like I said, if you're relying on Wayne Rooney, he's a great footballer, but he can't do it every week. And when you play against a better opposition, he's just going to get hounded out of the game. So yeah, I'm going to go for a Watford win. More out of not rating Derby than rating Watford. But yeah, I'll join you on that one. Anyway, the next game is 100% record Bristol City are away to managerless Barnsley. Can you see? I mean, we've already covered it. Can you see any sort of, I don't know, jump if for a new manager at Barnsley, or they're going to get?
I mean, it's the championship, so for all we know, Barnsley could win 8-0, and we're all just like idiots. But Bristol City just look very good right now, and Barnsley are probably one of the worst looking teams in the worst state looking team in the league with their situation. So it can only go one way, which means it'll go the other. But I'm going to say Bristol City.
Yeah, although I really want to disagree, and I really want to give Bristol City their first loss of the season. There's just, I can't do it with this one. There's absolutely no chance. Bristol City are winning that game easily. They'll rip Barnsley apart. Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday. Oh, Regan, this stinks. This absolutely reeks. This does. Oh.
So last week I said that Sheffield Wednesday are too crap to beat QPR and Birmingham are too crap to beat Stoke. So my logic is that they're too crap to beat each other. So it's going to be another draw.
I'm going to join you on a draw. I can no longer back teams that are too crap to win football matches. I mean, Birmingham beat us, but don't worry about that. But these two teams, there's teams that play each other, yeah. And if Birmingham and Sheffield Wednesday were playing against different opposition, you'd be like, oh, Birmingham could shit house a win, crank a football, like you've said a couple of times so far this season. Sheffield Wednesday, Gary Monk, they could shit house a win. But when they play each other, it just forms this massive turd that some people call football. And yeah, if that's what you call football, I don't want to like football anymore.
The equation is shit house plus shit house equals shit.
Yeah, shit house times shit house equals shit. You lose the house. Yeah, so Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday, I'm going to go for a draw as well. Blackburn versus Nottingham Forest. That's an interesting one. Blackburn, decent start to the season. Forest, new manager.
It's going to be down to whether Hughton can get his men up for the game quick enough. I don't know how many of them are on international duty, and I imagine not many because a lot of them are English. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give Hughton the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to back Nottingham Forest.
Unfortunately, I'm also going to back Nottingham Forest. These are, I've got to change one, but you're in the driving seat with these predictions. You can say what you want, and I sort of have to change. But I'm going to go for. I just think a manager like Chris Hughton always gets a bounce. He always gets one. I think he's just one of those managers who the players will just want, after having such the same message drilled into them and it not going well for ages. A new message will put them right up, and I think they'll win that game. Bournemouth versus QPR.
It's got to be Bournemouth. I've got nothing else to say. It's got to be Bournemouth, surely.
You'd think it's just the case of Bournemouth's attacking football being too good for QPR's defence, isn't it? I think that game.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. QPR get ripped apart. Lovely to see Johan Barbe scoring an own goal last week. Let's hopefully he scores another. Anyway, the next one is Brentford Coventry. I mean, every week it seems like we've been predicting Brentford to win. Slow start, but they have got the help of the international break for their sort of squad to get fully back to what it should be. Coventry, not a bad team either, though. They're no mugs. How can you see that game going?
I am going to back Brentford, but I am going to... Like I said, the transfer window is going to be closed by the time this happens. And even though I don't think it's going to happen, there's any chance that Ben Rama could leave. And I suppose it works both ways, because if the window's 100% closed and we know he's not going anywhere, he will surely start. Like he has to. He has to start and he has to.
I love Sergi Canos, but then Saïd Benrahma is a whole different quality of footballer.
Oh yeah, 100%. And because of that, assuming that I'm going off the fact that they're back to full strength and no one's left, and they're back to the team of last year minus Ollie Watkins. And I think that's going to be a newly promoted team that's doing well, but I'm going to say Brentford.
I completely agree. I'm going to go with Brentford. But if we lose this game, my predictions might start changing. So I can't see Saïd Benrahma leaving now. I don't think Brentford would have got him even involved in the squad if they knew there was a chance of him leaving. Seeing as they left him out of pre-season for so long. Benrahma back in the team, bit of magic. Norgard hopefully fit, or at least if he's not, is that Janelt guy will have had a few weeks of the squad. David Raya back in goal, like you said, full strength side. As long as Thomas Frank picks that full strength side, these are the sort of games where Brentford have to win. They will win them, and if as long as the full strength team's out, 2 weeks to work with the team, I think Brentford win that. I think the international breaks come at a perfect time for Brentford. Luton Stoke, Nathan Jones against his old side.
This screams a low scoring 0-0. But I think Nathan Jones is really going to rile his men up for this one, because the way he did at Stoke was terrible, to not think of a better word. It was terrible, and I'm gonna back Luton on this, because Stoke haven't made any improvements, and on paper their team still isn't great. I think Luton are the type of team that can just grind out a 1-0. So I'm going to say Luton.
I'm going to join you on Luton, but don't worry, I think I'm going to have some differences with you soon. I'm going to go Luton as well. I just think Stoke has started so nothing, and it could be around them. Luton are winning games, are doing all right. Nathan Jones, like we said before the season, Nathan Jones knows how to get the best out of Luton Football Club, and that squad of players is still very much the same as what he had. Stoke, we've covered it before. I made a ridiculous prediction that I didn't believe in. They're not very good, I don't think. Nothing else said. I think Luton have just got too much energy. Stoke look like a team without energy. Luton are a team with it. I think that's just it's just got a Luton win written all over it. The next game is Middlesbrough-Reading. Reading, 100% start to the season, flying. Middlesbrough got a win against Barnsley. Bit of an indifferent start.
I think, contrary to what you said about Brentford, I think the international break couldn't have come at a worse time for Reading. Because they've obviously got some quality in their team, but with a team like that, results they're getting, I think they needed to rely on a lot of momentum to keep this up. And this has come at a really bad time for them. Whereas Neil Warnock has been for a lot of international breaks and he still manages to get results out of their team. So I'm going to be very controversial, and I'm going to love Neil Warnock for this. I'm going to back Middlesbrough. Have you backed Borough as well?
Yeah. I think you knew that was going to happen as well. I think I gave it.
No, generally not.
I completely agree. Reading, I don't want to like this. You started brilliantly, fair play, and you play some lovely football. But I do think you're a team that can. Like I said, I still think you've got a weak underbelly that side. Maybe that's harsh. Maybe you beat Watford 1-0. You didn't concede. I was looking at that game thinking maybe I was wrong about them, but I think international break is definitely. You were a team that was living a lot on confidence and morale, and yeah, you're gonna have a good feeling around the club for 2 weeks. But I think giving Neil Warnock 2 weeks to prepare for this fixture, it's just got. And Reading, I think Reading might underestimate Middlesbrough, and I think Middlesbrough are going to come away with a win as well. Regan, I completely agree with you. Oh God, I don't like agreeing with you. 4 more games to go. We've got Rotherham, Norwich. Norwich slow starters. Rotherham exactly not flat out starters, but they're Rotherham. What do you expect? I think they're okay if their start to the season.
Can you go first on this one? I need to think about this one.
I'll happily go first on this one. I am going to go for a draw on this one. I'm going to go draw. I think Rotherham are the sort of side Norwich don't like playing against. But then I think Norwich have got a lot more quality than Rotherham. I don't know what I'm saying. I think these things, I'm saying the obvious. Norwich got more quality than Rotherham. but Rotherham are a team that will make it hard for Norwich as well. I think Norwich may start to slowly turn things around, but it will be slow. And I don't know. I just don't have confidence in Norwich winning at the moment. But I don't really like Rotherham. I don't think they're anything special. I think it's going to be one of those ones where Norwich obviously have most of the game, but it's like a 1-1 draw.
Because you've gone draw, I'm going to go draw as well.
Really? Is that?
No, I'm not going to do that. I do love what you said, that I believe this international break has come at a good time for Norwich, because hopefully over the break they can start to figure out what their best 11 is, because he obviously hasn't found it yet. And I think they could turn it around against a team that's a bit iffy, bit up and down. I think it's the perfect game for Norwich, and I do think it's going to be low scoring, like you said, but I could see it being a 2-1, 1-0 Norwich.
Okay. Right, Swansea, Huddersfield. Swansea flying. Huddersfield not so much.
Got to be.
Huddersfield. What?
It's got to be Swansea, because even though there are signs of Huddersfield that they're playing decent football, I just think that the quality the Swansea have is just too much for them.
Completely agree. I'm not going to completely sacrifice my predictions for stuff like that. That's just outrageous. If Swansea will win that football match. Wycombe, Millwall. Now, Wycombe are a team we've said we're going to always predict to lose. Changing your mind after the international break? Are you still going for it?
Yeah, Wycombe will win him.
You say Wycombe will win?
Yeah.
You say Wycombe will win?
No, of course not Millwall. No chance.
I'm going for a draw.
Oh!
Yeah, Wycombe, you're not losing.
Is that a point I see?
I mean, it's obvious that Millwall are a better team there. I just think after an international break, Wycombe, they're not going to have many players going away. Gareth Ainsworth, if he's going to get anything out of them this season at all, they're going to get relegated. If he's going to get anything out of them at all, this is the week he gets out of them. Wycombe against Millwall, this would be two sort of hard, rigid sides. Millwall have got a lot more quality. But if Wycombe can frustrate Millwall, I don't think are a team who sort of score goals out of nothing.
No.
So it's about, if they keep Jed Wallace quiet, I think Wycombe have got a chance. I'm sort of speaking out of hope rather than belief. But yeah, I'm going to go for a draw in that game. And then finally, those fixtures are rounded up with the Sunday lunchtime football of Preston and Cardiff. Preston coming off the back of a 4-2 win at Brentford. Cardiff 0-0 draw at Blackburn.
I mean, neither team, well, especially Cardiff, haven't started amazingly. Especially Cardiff, because I thought they'd be up there, but just haven't got the results together. But I think they're going to be similar to Norwich in the fact that I think this international break is good for them. It's going to be a bit of a turning point. And I think with the momentum Preston had just dying after the space of a week for the international break, don't think that's going to help them. Do I go for Cardiff or a draw? I am going to go for a draw.
Okay, I'm going to go for Preston. I think the game Cardiff could definitely win. And everything in my head's telling me Cardiff win. But I'm just going to go off for the Brentford-Preston game. Didn't think Preston were amazing, don't get me wrong. Brentford let them play. It was a terrible performance of Brentford. But Preston were a lot more comfortable on the ball. They got into their stride. I think Scott Sinclair's always a threat. And we know Preston are a decent side. They should be in and around the playoffs. They should be like in that sort of at least chasing pack. So, yeah, I'm just going to go confidence. They've scored 4 goals against Brentford. If you can score 4 against Brentford, you can probably score 4 against anyone in this league, to be honest. So I'm going to put some confidence in Preston. Just go for Preston to be a bit different. Anyway, that is our championship predictions done. And that is the end of the episode of Champ Talk, episode 4, where we have reviewed Game Week 4 and previewed Game Week 5, which is coming up after the international break. We will have one more episode with you during the international break. Well, I'm going to be joined by Mr. Sam Barnes while Regan's away, and we're going to discuss the start of every club's season. But before then, remember to like the video, subscribe to the From the Terrace podcast YouTube channel, turn those notifications on, Regan. We forget to tell them. Although I don't think I even have notifications on, so I won't force you to do it. Just press that red subscribe button, please. Leave us a rating on iTunes, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.